Hey there, folks. At time of recording, just yesterday, I got back from having gone to Gallifrey One out in Los Angeles. It's the Doctor Who convention. It's a great time. I recommend it if you ever get the chance to go out there. Um, but that meant I got to watch some stuff on the plane that maybe I hadn't found time for otherwise. So I've now seen The Marvels. I did not know what to expect of this going in. I know it's financially it's a somewhat notorious flop at this point for Marvel and for Disney. Critical reception seemed muted. Let's go with that. Obviously, the people who decry woke Disney absolutely hated it, but that's nothing new. There didn't really seem to be a clear consensus outside of that, at least not that I saw, and I didn't dig that far. So I didn't really know what to expect. It's not bad. I don't want to oversell it. There's problems. I think there is a good version of this movie that could have been made. So in the interest of not doing a whole bunch of supposition about what did or didn't happen, I'm going to instead describe what it feels like happened. Understanding I have absolutely no insider knowledge and cannot verify that this is what happened. But the movie that I saw feels like a movie that used to have a lot more material in it and used to have a lot longer. This is, I think, the shortest run time for a MCU movie. It has the feel of a movie that probably had a lot of stuff more fleshed out, some subplots, some things that were gone into more depth. But then when they got to the edit, they realized that the stuff that worked best was a bit lighter and a bit more breezy and was a bit more high energy, but so much of the plot stuff wasn't that. And so it feels like a film that was cut for tone as opposed to cut for story. Because I suspect if you were to cut this for perfect narrative clarity and full depth, it would be about a half hour longer and a hell of a lot more boring. What we have instead is a movie that, when it is working well, it does work well. And its best moments are undoubtedly the high energy, kind of a romp feel to it. Those are absolutely the best things it has going for it. That's the best energy this thing brings. And there are things in it that if you're trying to trim time for narrative, you might get rid of. Like there's a bunch of stuff that goes on with Goose, the cat, aka Flurkin. So not really a cat. But there's stuff that goes on with him that if you were just cutting for narrative clarity, you drop it. But you keep it if you're cutting for tone, because the tone of what goes on with Goose matches the tone of the strongest material in this. So I suspect that a more complete cut is significantly longer, stronger narratively, weaker tonally. That is at least how it feels. Because there's definitely stuff that feels flat out missing. Some of it is character depth and dynamics. The villain suffers from this a lot, unfortunately. And the shame about that is I actually found the performance for the villain to be quite compelling. Like, she was giving a real interesting performance, but like, we learn almost nothing about her. Like, the movie starts and she's already doing her thing, and like, half the cast already seems to know her, if not personally, at least know completely what she's about, so we don't really get a strong sense of her. And she's got this sort of right-hand man character who also seemed to have an interesting dynamic, but who also just kind of vanishes from the movie about halfway through. And I don't even know if his name is said. But that's the kind of thing that feels like it probably had a lot more meat on it. Like, I suspect that really what should have happened is this story probably should have been cut down at the scripting phase, and instead they probably ended up with something. Again, it feels like they probably ended up with something bloated and then cut it for pace and tone. So, and there's also some logistical plot things that it's like, wait a minute, not in the plot makes no sense kind of way, but rather in a, did you forget or did you just cut the scene that would have resolved that? So, like, for instance, I'll get to the main three in a minute. For instance, Kamala Khan has, this bangle that they've given her in her series. If you watch that, and there's apparently a second one, and that's what the villain's gotten. her hands on. And so eventually, both of those come into play, but then at the end, we only see one of them again, and I'm like, what happened to the other bangle? Because I feel like they kind of glossed over what actually happened to that. And again, there's probably a scene cut somewhere along the way that covers what happened to it, but instead it just kind of brushes past. And the thing is, while this is a criticism, I think a very legit criticism of this movie, like you can see the seams, you can feel the scissors on this. I think if my gut instinct is correct about why it ended up the way it did, it might have been for the best. Because, yeah, the best stuff is light and fun and bouncy and just kind of moves along at a good pace. As far as the performers go, Kamala Khan is the standout. Like, all three are good, actually, and I think I found Brie Larson more compelling as Carol Danvers in this than I did in Captain Marvel. I do think overall Captain Marvel is a better movie than this, but like as a character, since so much of Captain Marvel was her kind of trying to find her humanity again and get out of a bit of brainwashing, she was often flat in a way that I think worked. But I just as a character, she had more personality in this, and getting to see her bounce off of Monica and off of Kamala, and Monica probably gets a little bit of the short shrift. Is that which is the phrase? I don't know. Short shrift in this because Carol is already established, and Kamala kind of feels like she gets a proper highlight, and Monica feels a little bit like the mom of the trio, a little bit of the wet blanket, not totally. She's still got good performance chemistry with the other three, which is ultimately what you need. The whole thing with them, if you saw this from the trailer, like things basically kick off where, for weird reasons, the three of them kind of become entangled in a way where if two of them use their powers at the same time, they physically swap places no matter how far apart they are from each other. They just kind of like teleport to where the other one was. And that's, first of all, kind of a bonkers idea, but it's a really fun idea. Like, I really loved the montage of them learning to get used to this and like trying to coordinate, and then what the action scenes where they actually actively use that, but also some mistakes still happen, so it's not like it's perfectly seamless, but it's like, okay, this is something we're trying to use, but boy, this is awkward at the same time. That was fun. Again, fun when this thing is focused on being fun, such as when they land on a planet where the native language is song, and when Monica tries to talk to them without singing, they basically ignore her because they don't really understand what she's saying. And eventually they meet a character who does, because he's bilingual. He can communicate without having to sing it. And like, is that an absolutely preposterous, silly idea? Yeah. It's comic books. Silly ideas are the bread and butter. But what I like about it is it's a very cinematic silly idea. It's the kind of silly idea that, look, let's be honest, would be at home in comics, and probably treated largely in the same way, as a one-stop location for some, fun and some silliness, and to move the plot along a little bit. While the type of silly that this is very at home in comics, comics couldn't do this specifically, or at least not do it well, because there's no audio component to comics. So that's the kind of silly that is very evocative of what I find to be an acceptable level of silly that is in comics, but done in a way that plays much better in film. I thought that was great. So there's stuff like that where it really feels like, I'm not even going to say the more effort was put there, but like clearly that's where like the pieces came together the best. And the movie shines at some points. It honestly does, just not consistently. And again, there's just the persistent issue of like feeling like something was skipped, or feeling like you noticed an ADR line that was in there to cover a scene that was cut, feeling like the villain could have been good, but isn't because too much of her material is gone. So like there's definitely problems. And if I were to, I don't know if I'll ever do this again, but if I were to do another full ranking of all the MCU films, it would be lower half for sure. But like when it's good, it's a lot of fun. And again, Kamala is an absolute bundle of joy, and I hope that the financial difficulty that this movie faced will not prevent Marvel from using her more, because she's great. She's a little internal cheerleader for the MCU itself and superheroes. She's just so excited to be there. It's wonderful. I love her. And I honestly sometimes wonder, like, are the other two good, or are they just buoyed by the fact that they get to play off of her? And I'm not sure. I think they're okay, even in a vacuum, because they do get some material between each other that's still pretty good, but their best stuff is with her. So, like, yeah, she is the shining light at the center of what is good about this film, but it is stumbling along a bit at times. And like, if you're not into the sillier side of superhero and comic book storytelling, then yeah, what is good about this probably won't appeal to you, because this is not doing the larger, grander scale and scope and cosmic threats and the world's gonna end. It's doing a lot of that, but it's not doing it particularly well. So I guess it depends on what you want out of a comic book movie experience. If you want something a little bit on the more frivolous side just for fun, give it a shot. Couldn't hurt. But it's hard to recommend to anybody who takes this stuff more seriously, for lack of a better way to put it. If you're in the mood for a less serious comic book movie, this might do you well. Just understand some plot beats are gonna feel like they're missing. Anyway, The Marvels. What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out there. Like, share, subscribe. Those are all good, but don't worry too much about it. Because, we take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. And I'd like to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lafula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Geek Filter, Linda Walters, Jen, Auntie 808, Becky Sparks, Frenabulax the Poodle, Robin Powell, T-Love, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pal Barabajagal, and Mara G. Yes, we do have new rats in the house. Whoa, you want it? We actually have two. This is Brownie. I couldn't get Sprite to come out, but say hi. Thanks for the support.